Hello there. Welcome into a Friday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app to do your listening. And that app is sponsored, of course, by Diversus Health, mental health, and well-being for all. A veritable cornucopia of sports topics await you. And I'd love to get your thoughts. You could call or text them in at 719-247-1313, or you can tweet them at me at Gingerly Tweets. Let's get going, shall we? You would think there would come a point where the Pacers stop winning like this. Logic would dictate being down by double digits in the fourth quarter is not a sustainable model of success. And yet here we are again. The Pacers won exactly this way again. Down 15 with 9:42 to go in the game. A game Oklahoma City led the entire way. The Indiana Pacers proceeded to outscore one of the most dominant single-season teams we have ever seen, 30-16, to get it to within one with 22 seconds to go. And this, even if you've heard it before or watched it, you're going to want to get it again. Here you go.
Gildas Alexander spins, pulls up, jumper, off the mark, won't go, rebound Neesmith. The Pacers with a chance to win it. Final seconds, no fouls to give. Haliburton looking, Haliburton driving, pulls up, jump shot. It's good! With 0.3 of a second remaining. Timeout, OKC. Tyrese Haliburton does it again.
Audio courtesy of the NBA. This is 4 times Tyrese Haliburton has done this in these playoffs alone. Game 5 in the first round against the Bucks. Drives past Giannis for the game-winning layup in overtime. Then game 2 against the Cavaliers in the second round, misses a free throw, down 2, gets his own rebound, and hits a step-back 3 with 1.1 seconds to go. And then, of course, you recall what happened in game 1 against New York, the high bounce off the rim on the 2. He hits the Reggie Miller choke gesture. But last night was the pièce de résistance for Tyrese Haliburton against that team in that building in game 1 of a series that no one is giving the Pacers any chance to win. Haliburton did it again, and they take game 1, and with it, a 71% chance that they're going to win the whole thing. Just like that. What we're seeing right now from Tyrese Haliburton, it is Mahomesian in nature. We are now at the point that no amount of time remaining on the clock is too little for Tyrese Haliburton and the Pacers to beat you. Right? Any time left on the clock. Too much time for Tyrese Haliburton. The only thing that's going to keep you safe from this Pacers team is if you have the ball in your hands with zeros on the clock. That's what he's doing. He's doing what Patrick Mahomes has done. And it's not just the Haliburton shots. That's the crazy thing. That's only half of the story. What Haliburton is doing with these buzzer beaters, with these last-second jumpers. It's the other half is what these shots are the culmination of. They were down by 17 after the first quarter in that Milwaukee game. That Haliburton drove past Giannis, and you remember his dad got on the court, that whole thing. They were down, the Pacers were down by 17 after the first quarter of that game. That game 2 in Cleveland, the Pacers were down 14 in the fourth quarter. Game 1 at the Garden, down 15 with 5 minutes to play. and they were down 15 in the fourth quarter last night. It's not just the clutch shots from Tyrese Haliburton. It's this team routinely coming back from the dead in all of these games. The Indiana Pacers now have 5 wins in these playoffs, down 15 or more. No other team in the last 20 years of the NBA has even 4 such wins in the playoffs. And it's just who they are. It's just what they do. And if you watched the game last night, it wasn't anything unique or different that allowed Indiana to get back in the game. It was just Indiana Pacer basketball. It's not Haliburton taking over the game offensively, at least not from a scoring perspective. You only have 14 points in the game. But 5 other Pacers scored in double figures. It's Tyrese Haliburton orchestrating that offense like a maestro, getting the ball to where it needs to go to get open shots. 5 other players scored in double figures for Indiana. And you look at the shots during the last 9-ish minutes of that fourth quarter. They get a couple of shots by Nebhard, couple of shots by Turner, couple of shots by Toppin, couple of shots from Haliburton. Nesmith gets in on the act. And all of those guys also assisted on other people's baskets. It's what we see from this Indiana team is the highest form of team basketball. It is everybody getting in on the act and doing it last night against a team that we would very much equate the same kind of basketball to. Right? In the Nuggets Thunder series, it wasn't just Shea. It was Jalen Williams chipping in and Hartenstein and Chet and the other Jalen Williams and Alex Caruso. And what was that I said? Because I got to own up to this. Everything Indiana does well, OKC does better. Not last night. That team basketball, that 5 guys forming one fist, Indiana did it better than OKC. It looked the last 9 minutes of that game like Shea was playing 1-on-5. That's what it looked like. And Shea was great. He scored 38. Yeah, he didn't make that shot there at the end, which was surprising. But, I mean, the guy did everything up until that point. And other guys chipped in. You look at the box score, you had a couple of other players that scored in double figures, but it just, when it was time for Indiana to turn it on and do what Indiana does, it looked like it was Shea against 5 Pacers on both ends of the floor. It was remarkable. And as I'm fond of saying, game 1 is about sending messages, setting tones. And the message that the Pacers sent, and Tyrese Haliburton specifically, is that now there's no doubt they can do this against anyone, in any building, at any time. Because sure, they did it against Milwaukee, and they did it against Cleveland, and they did it against New York, but this is OKC. They can't possibly do this. Well, they did it. The first chance they got, they did it in OKC. Doing it against OKC means they can do it against literally anyone. And now what you're left with in this series is Adam Silver's dream. He has spent the last 3 days defending to the death this matchup that everyone claimed no one was going to watch. No one cared. And now because of what Indiana did last night, even if OKC jumps all over them in game 2, you're going to stick around. You're going to stick around and you're going to watch. Because Oklahoma City's got to be up by 30 before you're going to bury this Pacers team. This series that supposedly no one wanted to watch and no one would watch is now going to be must-see television. Because at any time, unless the Thunder are up by 30 points, you're going to be like, I think it's over, but I don't know. It is the Pacers after all. You're going to be locked in. Absolutely locked in from start to finish. Now, what this says about the series overall, mathematically, it could still be OKC in 5. But I think the more significant piece of this is that, one, people are going to buy into this series. People are now going to be watching this series for the chance to see some more of these heroics again. But also the seed is planted in the heads of OKC. They can't, and last night looked very similar to game 1 with the Denver Nuggets. Right? OKC being the front-running team that they are, they got out to a decent lead, but they just couldn't shake the Nuggets. They couldn't put them away. The Nuggets kept hanging in there, and then the game ends with Aaron Gordon hitting a shot at the buzzer. I think a lot of people thought OKC was past that. I kind of did. After game 4 against the Nuggets, I thought this team's no longer, so much of of a front running team. Like, they can make plays down the stretch. They can win close games. And they had. And I think in some shape or form, OKC felt that way. The way they played from the end of game 4 in the Nuggets series all the way until last night, I could understand where they thought, even with Indiana's past history, that they thought they had it. And now the seed has been planted that if OKC is going to beat this Indiana team, they better put them in the ground. Because now up by 15 in the fourth quarter means nothing. And how many teams can you say that about? That being down by 15 in the fourth quarter doesn't mean anything. This Indiana team, remarkable. I don't care how the rest of this series goes. Indiana and OKC are remarkable basketball teams. Only one of them is going to be a champion. And for the record, I still think it's going to be OKC. But we so often forget the runners up. We wipe them out of our minds and we don't really talk about them. This Indiana team is special. It is a special team. And regardless of how this thing finishes, I hope that both teams get remembered for their playoff runs. Game on. Series on. First chance. Not even waiting to a game 3 or game 2. Right away, game 1. Haliburton and the Pacers did it again. Unreal. I would say unbelievable. I guess I'm saying unreal. It's very real. It's who they are, and they're spectacular. Take your thoughts on last night, 719-247-1313. Does it change the way you think about this series? Again, history will tell you 71% of the time, winning game 1 works every time. Sunday is going to be fun. That's when game 2 is. Just getting going on this Friday edition of the show. Coming up next, I promise not to gloat, but there's coaching news out of Dallas. I won't be taking any victory lap. I did that earlier this afternoon. But the news out of Dallas is not at all surprising to me. It's really not. You can't do what Pete DeBoer did in and after Game 5 of the Western Conference Finals, throwing your franchise goaltender under the bus when you yourself have lost 3 consecutive Western Conference Finals. And that's the thing about this with Pete DeBoer getting fired today by the Dallas Stars. It's actually not that he lost 3 straight Western Conference Finals. It's not that he even pulled Jake Ottinger after 2 shots in Game 5. It was what he did at the podium afterwards. He basically invited people, gave them the easy retort. He first broke the cardinal rule of pulling your goalie, which is you do not blame your goalie. It is on everyone else. You don't even put a name to it. You just say, we needed a spark. That's all you say. It happens all the time. You don't deviate from that script. You don't call out your goaltender by name and say, oh, if you're wondering, I actually did pull him because he sucks. But in doing that, Pete DeBoer opens himself up for people to go, wait a minute. Dating back to how many years? You haven't gotten through. You haven't beaten the Oilers either. I think he just lost his mind. The exasperation of another season falling short, I think it got to Pete DeBoer, and he had a moment that maybe forever he will regret. But it's not his track record in Western Conference Finals that got him fired. It's not pulling Jake Ottinger what got him fired. It's what he said. And then you go back and you're like, wait a minute, you did that, and then you did this and did this. You know, Jeff Van Gundy once said that if they don't get you on results, they'll get you on relationships regarding getting fired, right? If they don't have results to back up their claim that you should be fired, they'll chalk it up to the relationships with the players. In fact, Michael Malone, we could kind of run Michael Malone's firing through this, right? Actually, the results saved him for a little while, right? Josh Kroenke was considering firing him before the All-Star break, and then they went on a winning streak, and he's like, well, I can't do it now. And you could see the signs that the Nuggets were on a downward trend. But look at the reaction the firing got nationally. You and I keep a close eye on it, and we could see the warning signs that this team was heading for disaster. But if you just looked at the wins or where they're at in the standings, the results weren't there to justify firing Michael Malone. So then it was the relationship with him and Calvin Booth. Now there is legitimacy to that. The Nuggets weren't making that up. Like, that was there. But it would be a much more difficult argument for Josh Kroenke to make, to sit here and say, well, we're underachieving. What about it? What about the Nuggets' record? If you just looked at it, would you say means the Nuggets are underachieving? Without being locked in like you and I are with this basketball team on almost a day-to-day basis. But it was ultimately the relationship between Michael Malone and Calvin Booth, Michael Malone and the players, that got him fired. And then we just had it with the Knicks. Again, I don't want anybody to give the Knicks credit to like they're following some sort of a trend. they're just an incompetent organization doing incompetent things. But what's their reasoning for firing Tom Thibodeau? And they got Ramona Shelburne to write the piece. This is the second time that Ramona Shelburne has penned a hit piece recently. Remember the Russell Westbrook piece during the Oklahoma City series? So she's writing something again. I don't want to pick on her because there are a lot of people in the media who are doing this, but it's the players. Wasn't getting along with the players. He was wearing down on the players. That's what because it's hard to prove without insider knowledge. But with Pete DeBoer, they got him on relationships. In the severed relationship that he clearly now has with Jake Ottinger, in the relationships he has with the rest of the players, who apparently in their exit interviews voiced their displeasure over the way Pete DeBoer handled the loss in Game 5. But you could actually say that without that, like if you just took away the Jake Ottinger of it all, you don't think there would be questions in Dallas about whether Pete DeBoer was the right man to get Dallas to a Stanley Cup final? As they continue to beat their head up against this Western Conference final wall, you don't think there would be people asking questions? Would it have gotten him fired? Probably not. But when he did what he did, now you also look and go, well, this guy hasn't gotten past the Western Conference Finals in the better part of a decade. I don't know that there will be a ton of people up in arms about firing Pete DeBoer. But it's what he said post-game after Game 5 that got him fired, ultimately. The proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. The other stuff, pulling Jake Ottinger, failing to advance out of another Western Conference final, that stuff could have been, spun and explained and all that kind of stuff. But what he did post-game, Game 5, you couldn't come back from it. And I said at the time, it felt like a fireable offense. But now the reality sets in around the Dallas Stars organization. Right? You can make a move that's the right move, but now you got to follow it up. We just thought we completed the NHL hiring cycle. Who are the Dallas Stars going to get? I could think of one name, and he's coaching the DU Pioneers right now. But we've had a good chunk of the league. I think a quarter of the league has already made their coaching hires. I think Pete DeBoer in that way put the organization in a very tough spot. They could have gotten through it had he not lost his mind for a minute there at the post-game press conference. But now they're going to have to go out and find a new head coach. That head coach is going to have the weight of expectation. They got to get out of the Western Conference final. And oh, by the way, there were already questions about what this roster is going to look like. Now, it's all well and good that you have Mikko Rantanen and you locked him up, but now there are discussions, can they hang on to Jason Robertson? Are they going to trade Mason Marchment this summer? You got your longtime captain, Jamie Benn, that's now an unrestricted free agent. They got a lot of holes to fill, and they got about $5 million to do it. Like the Dallas Stars are, to put it mildly, are in a bit of a pickle right now. And where that is of local interest is now you have the team that has been your doom for the last 2 years, and historically, but over the last 2 years especially, this team, this coach, you have not been able to get past. And now that coach is gone, and there are major questions. There are more questions on the Dallas Stars roster today than there are on the Avalanche roster. So I don't know how you feel about where the Avs are with Jared Bednar as the head coach, re-signing Brock Nelson with, some of the question marks throughout the roster that they may have. I don't know how you feel about where the Avalanche are right now, but you got to feel a little bit better about their chances next year, regardless, because of what's happening in Dallas. They look like an organization in a bit of disarray. And again, I do not blame them one iota for firing Pete DeBoer. Not at all. This is on Pete DeBoer. This is on Jim Nill. This is on the Dallas Stars organization. Pete DeBoer put that target on his back. He messed this up and forced Dallas's hand. But now they are in a difficult situation. And how they navigate their way through this offseason to have a team to get out of the Western Conference, it'll be fascinating to watch. Fascinating to see what happens in Dallas. Pete DeBoer fired. Your thoughts, 719-247-1313. He's not the only coach of a professional Dallas franchise that may be on his way out. Talk NBA next on Extra Sports 1300. The 45th U.S. Senior Open is returning to the Broadmoor for a record-tying third time. You can get your tickets to see the world's best golfers compete June 26th through the 29th at ussenioropen.com. Some notes on that. As we approach the U.S. Senior Open, I will be doing the show out there the first 2 days of the tournament, so that will be fun, and maybe a few giveaways coming up. But you probably just, to be safe, get your tickets at ussenioropen.com. Text coming in at 719-247-1313. Have they traded Porter yet? No. The Nuggets have not traded Michael Porter. Most of that business is yet to be conducted. No one has made any moves of any kind because the NBA Finals are going on. But coincidentally enough, there is a new mock trade just dropped regarding Michael Porter, as every sports media entity on planet Earth is trying to figure out a way for the Denver Nuggets to move on from Michael Porter. So I'll give you what that is coming up in a little bit. But let's stick with the NBA. And I was just talking about the Dallas Stars and the predicament they have found themselves in because of what Pete DeBoer did, throwing Jake Ottinger under the bus. Now, there is a similar situation happening in New York right now. Not because of anything Tom Thibodeau did. In fact, it's only because that organization is an absolute joke. But the New York Knicks find themselves in a very similar situation as the Dallas Stars, because now they have to replace a coach who gave them their first Eastern Conference Finals appearance in 30 years. They won back-to-back. They had back-to-back 50-win seasons for the first time in a quarter century. They were a team that was ascending. They had gotten one round further than they did the previous year. There was no grounds to terminate the contract of Tom Thibodeau, but the New York Knicks did, and now the clowns in that organization are now having to pick up the pieces, and they're realizing, oh, crap, we got to actually land somebody who's better than Tom Thibodeau. We got to find somebody that we can hold up and sell to the masses as, see, we knew what we were doing. You may have liked Tom Thibodeau. You may have thought that we shouldn't have fired him, but look at who he brought in. That's why the Michael Malone thing didn't make a ton of sense to me. But that's why the initial list was every unemployed head coach in every level of basketball. It was like Dan Hurley, and it was Jason Kidd, and it was Ty Lue, and it was like, wait a minute. Those guys are employed. Like, you need permission to talk to these people. You can't just take Jason Kidd from the Dallas Mavericks. Well, the Knicks are requesting permission to interview Jason Kidd. And just out of principle, I hope that the Mavericks deny them. And then I hope they knock on the Clippers' door, and I hope the Clippers deny them. And then I hope they knock on another team's door and they deny them, UConn's door, and they deny them. Like, they did this without thinking, and they should be punished for it. That's what I think. Now, what could the Mavericks be thinking here? So the Knicks go to Dallas and they say, we want Jason Kidd. Okay. What are they going to give them? Because they don't have draft capital. They gave it all away to Brooklyn to get Mikal Bridges. Even if you offer up a player, I don't even know. Has there been a player for Coach Swab in the NBA? But let's say they can do it. The guy that's getting the most heat right now is Karl Anthony Towns. You think Nico Harrison wants another big? So I don't know what the Knicks could possibly offer Dallas. The only thing I can think of is Jason Kidd at the mere thought of being able to take over the New York Knicks decides, yeah, I would actually like that job, and puts pressure on the organization to let him go. But really, do you want this job? Like, there's so much stuff that has to be figured out. But let's take a step back and start with square one. Should Jason Kidd want the New York Knicks job? Now, there's no doubt that the Knicks are a better team than Dallas. Dallas obviously had their issues this year and traded away one of the 5 best players in the NBA. So I know that the Mavericks job is not the most desirable position to hold in the NBA, but you did just get gifted Cooper Flagg, a young player that you could mold into play. And I don't know that Jason Kidd has had a lot of opportunities to do this. You're getting a ready-made team in New York. With Dallas, you got Cooper Flagg. You don't have an awful team. Dallas isn't terrible. Still a borderline playoff team, even in a difficult West. Now you're getting Cooper Flagg. Like, would you really rather take the Knicks job? Where the expectation is maybe that, maybe with Dallas, you don't see a path to get to a title anytime soon. But you go to the Knicks, and it doesn't matter who it is, Jason Kidd, Jay Wright, Dan Hurley, Michael Malone, you will need to make the NBA Finals. Or they're going to be after you. Who in the world would want that job? It's a good roster, but it has its flaws. You're joining a clown show of an organization under the most white-hot spotlight you can get. And the only way your season will be viewed as successful is if you make the NBA Finals. Does that grass look greener on that other side? I could see why, Johnny, what's his name? Johnny Bryant, assistant for the Cavs. I could see why maybe he wants the job. I could see why maybe Michael Malone would want that job. He was pretty good in the TV gig, but he's a coach, and this is a job that's open. And his dad, he has ties to New York through his dad and all that kind of stuff. I could see why, even with that burden of the highest of expectations, why someone who is an assistant or someone who is unemployed would be like, yeah, I'll take that on. What else do I got going on? But somebody who has job stability. In fact, with the moves that Dallas made, Jason Kidd has one of the longest leashes in the NBA. Nobody expects Dallas to do much of anything. But meanwhile, you get Cooper Flagg. And maybe he's awesome right out of the gate. If I'm Jason Kidd, I'm like, no, I'm good. I don't need this job. I'll stay here. I got, if you would ask me 2 months ago, then maybe I would have been interested. But now I got Cooper Flagg showing up. I'd probably like to see this thing through a little bit. Knowing, and here's the other part too. You can see how this plays out. New York hires someone. They don't follow through on getting the Knicks to the NBA Finals, but maybe they make some moves along the way. Now you could be the guy after the guy. You could be the guy that follows the guy after Tom Thibodeau. and you're a savior, right? Because the Knicks are inevitably going to backslide. Tibbs maxed out that roster, contrary to the reporting that is going on ESPN today. He got the most out of that roster that he could. The next guy to step in is not going to be able to do that. They will backslide. They will turn on that coach as quickly as he gets there, and they'll be looking for the next off-ramp. And now you can maybe, if you're a Jason Kidd or Ime Udoka, you'd be like, all right, now I'm more interested in the New York job. You don't want to follow Tibbs. You want to follow the guy that follows Tibbs. So I don't see why Jason Kidd would want this job. I don't see why the Mavericks would be willing to let Jason Kidd out of his deal to save the Knicks from the terrible decision that they made. And I like Jason Kidd as a coach. This is not me saying that Jason Kidd will necessarily fail in New York. He'll fail by their standards because their standards is NBA Finals or bust. But Jason Kidd's a good coach. He's going to have them near the top of the Eastern Conference. It's just, as we saw last night, like Indiana's real. Indiana's not going anywhere next year. Boston may be in a bit of transition. Cleveland, what do they decide to do? I mean, maybe you could fool yourself into thinking that you can get out of the East right now with those teams in a state of flux, but your margin for error is nothing. It's zero. But this is the corner that the Knicks have backed themselves into. They made an awful decision with no plan B. And now they're having to just grasp at straws and see if anybody that's currently employed by an NBA team wants to leave, and if their team is willing to let them leave. If I'm Houston with Ime Udoka, if I'm Dallas with Jason Kidd, I'm saying no way. No way. They are devoid of draft capital. And getting back around to the text I started the segment with, it's kind of like the Michael Porter thing. Like, I'm just going to blindly say yes to the Denver Nuggets to help them out of a pickle. What value do I get out of the deal? It's the same thing here with the Knicks approaching these teams. Like, what could they possibly offer of value? And whatever they do have to give up, well, what about this tsunami? What was it phrased as? A tsunami type offer for Giannis? Who are you giving up for Giannis? What are you giving up? Tyler Kolek and Karl Anthony Towns for Giannis Antetokounmpo? Like, give me a break. That was one trade that somebody published the other day. Are you kidding me? When I could go to San Antonio or Houston and get a plethora of draft picks and also a couple of young and up-and-coming players, why would I deal Giannis to the Knicks? So the Knicks right now are getting ready to make a huge splash by bringing Jason Kidd from Dallas in, and then they're going to also trade for Giannis. This seems to me like a desperate attempt by the Knicks PR team to turn the news cycle back in their direction. Pay no attention to the fact that we hired one of the more successful coaches in the NBA the last few years for no reason at all. We're going to trade for Giannis. You just wait and see. We're going to go poach Jason Kidd and get him out of Dallas. You wait and see. It just goes back to the point I made a couple of days ago. Do not let any semblance of success distract you from the fact that bad organizations with bad owners stay bad. It will eventually come out that they are still a bad organization, and that's where the Knicks are right now. They're going to get Jason Kidd and Giannis. Get out of here. Make your bed, lie in it, and nobody help them. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on that. Coming up next, you'll hear from Broncos Joker, Evan Ingram, and why the term Joker is seeming to take on more of a meaning with this Denver Broncos team than just a guy that creates mismatches. Welcome in Drive Time Sports on this fine Friday. Glad to have you along. Glad to have you watching the show on our social media platforms, Facebook, X, Instagram, and YouTube. The handle is all the same, at XTRA Sports 1300. If you would like to chime in on the day's topics, feel free. The lines of communication are wide open. You can call or text in at 719-247-1313, or you can find me on social media at Gingerly Tweets on X and at Kaufman Sports on Instagram. Joker. Much has been made about this word when it comes to the Denver Broncos. This was what Sean Payton said above all else the Denver Broncos needed. And they got it in the form of Evan Ingram. But what does it mean? The easy explanation, the easy definition is a player that creates mismatches all over the field. But listening to Evan Ingram, who tweeted out a gif of Heath Ledger's Joker, he's embracing it. He knows it. He knows what this means, but it seems like it's taking on a bit of a more importance. First and foremost, though, Evan Ingram knows that the Joker role is not just given to you. You have to earn it.
I see that as something that's got to be earned with the way I work, the way I come in and learn the offense, and gain the trust of Sean and Bo and the rest of the coaches and the rest of the players. So, I think we got a bunch of jokers, honestly, on this team that can have a great role in this offense. So, it's definitely something that I like to embrace, but something I'm going to go earn.
And again, other jokers, and this has been brought up before, like maybe RJ Harvey can be a joker out of the backfield. But it sounds to me like it's not just what they call like a jack of all trades almost, right? Like with Evan Ingram, you could put him tight to the line of scrimmage. You can split him out wide. He can block for you. But listening to him, it's almost like the closest thing I can think of in recent memory. Remember when Deion Sanders had the thing where couldn't you have a D on your jersey for dog or something like that? L for leader. Was it L and D? But like he had these terms that went beyond just like what level of football player you were. Like it was some kind of a title of respect almost. And I'm feeling like that's what this Broncos team, the guys that are being brought in, are kind of turning this into. That it's not just about your football skills. It's like this high honor that is bestowed upon you. You are the Joker, or you are one of the Jokers. I wouldn't be surprised at some point that the Broncos just refer to themselves as Jokers, just like this idea that you're everything. What I think it comes from is you're everything that Sean Payton could hope for in a football player. But that also extends beyond your physical gifts and where he can line you up on the field. And that's what Evan Ingram is referring to, right? It's the grasp of the offense. And to that point, it's not going to be easy. And I talked about this in the lead up to the draft when I was talking about Tyler Warren being such a great fit for this role. But I chased it with the caveat of, Tyler Warren's got to learn almost the entire offense. I mean, he's got to go through a crash course that only Bo Nix has gone through. Like, he's got to understand so much about what the Denver Broncos offense does. And I said, even if they draft Tyler Warren, as much as that would be an amazing pick, you'd have to be patient with him. The idea is you bring in Evan Ingram, and he doesn't have that additional learning curve by being a first-year professional. But Evan Ingram's still going to have his nose buried in the Broncos playbook. He's going to have to know blocking schemes. He's going to have to know running plays. He's going to have to know passing plays. He's going to have to know when he's lined up tight to the line of scrimmage, when he's split out wide. It's a lot. And I think that's kind of part of what he's referring to, too. There are great expectations for that position. And outside of Bo Nix, is there a Bronco under more pressure this season than Evan Ingram from a production standpoint? Maybe Nick Bonito, if they don't get, well, even if they do, if they get a big deal done, that's where the pressure comes in. So if they pay Nick Bonito, you'd probably put him in that group. You know, is Cortland Sutton playing his last year with the Denver Broncos? There's some pressure there. But in terms of needing to produce in order to help the Broncos win football games, outside of Bo Nix, Evan Ingram is probably the next guy on that list. And he said yesterday he didn't feel any pressure, more responsibility, I suppose, to live up to all that Joker role means. But this is, Sean Payton set it up. Like, this is the difference. This is what unlocks everything else. You know, J.K. Dobbins came and went from Denver with no deal. J.K. Dobbins is not a Denver Bronco. And he's free to go interview with other teams. But Evan Ingram's presence is supposed to have a positive impact on the run game, on the wide receiving core, and most importantly, on Bo Nix. Evan Ingram is supposed to be Bo Nix's best friend this year. Who he's going to look to when the Broncos need to make a play, 3rd and long. He's going to be looking for Evan Ingram. As that relationship starts to grow, Evan Ingram likes everything that he sees and hears from his new quarterback.
I had lunch with him on my visit here, so he made it a point to be here and meet me, and even at lunch, I was able to just kind of listen to his process and things that he's working on, and just really impressive young guy. And like I said, the potential is through the roof, and I like to see myself as somebody that can come in and help his development and take this team to another level.
And there is recent historical precedence for what Evan Ingram should be for the Denver Broncos. Right? I'm not saying he's going to be better than these guys, but he's going to fill a similar role. You think Mark Andrews in the role he has in Baltimore. I heard Lamar Jackson recently talking about Mark Andrews, and there were some thoughts that Mark Andrews was going to get traded this offseason, maybe even to the Denver Broncos. And you listen to Lamar, like, Mark Andrews is his best friend. He's his security blanket. He don't want to lose Mark Andrews. As much as he probably believes in Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews is his guy. When he needs to make a play, like you saw last year, he's going to look to Mark Andrews. Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, same thing. Brady and Gronk. Now, Evan, again, I cannot stress this enough. I'm not saying put Travis Kelce or Gronk level production on Evan Ingram, but it's that role. And it's a role that so many tight ends take around the league. And now you add on top of it this whole notion of a joker, that it's not just that he's going to be a reliable weapon in the pass game. He's going to be the guy to unlock everything. A Broncos offense that was 18th in the league. If they're going to take a step up, you heard Evan Ingram mention it, it's going to be him. Especially when you look at the wide receiving core and the running back room and I don't know how much better they are. But this is a significant upgrade. Significant. And I was on, as soon as Sean Payton mentioned Joker, I was on Evan Ingram. That this was the guy that they needed to bring in. That they could realistically bring in to be able to do it. The tight end position has not been a fruitful one for the Denver Broncos even before Sean Payton and Bo Nix got there. So there's a lot on Evan Ingram's shoulders. And he's not unlike some of these other players like Dre Greenlaw or Talanoa Hufanga. Why was he available? If he's got the capabilities that we all think he does, why was he available? Why wouldn't he be good for Trevor Lawrence? Because Evan Ingram didn't last season make it through the whole year. And a lot of the Broncos, whether they take a step up, whether they get better from last year, a lot of it is going to rely on the health of these players that they were able to get only because of recent injury history. But outside of Bo Nix, I don't think there's a Bronco with more on his shoulders than Evan Ingram. Does sound like a guy that's ready for it, though. And that's all he can be at this point. Just ready for it and embracing it. Take your thoughts, 719-247-1313. Again, if you were waiting with bated breath as far as the signing of J.K. Dobbins, please exhale or breathe, take a breath, because it's not happening, at least not yet. J.K. Dobbins left Denver without a contract. So we'll see if anything comes back around to that or whether J.K. Dobbins gets scooped up by another team. But J.K. Dobbins or no J.K. Dobbins, Evan Ingram's the dude. A lot of the Broncos' success this season is going to be riding on him. 719-247-1313. More Drive Time Sports right after this. Tyrese Haliburton does it again as the Indiana Pacers steal game 1 of the NBA Finals with a shot with 0.3 seconds to go to cap off a 15-point rally in the fourth quarter. Never forget that his peers voted him the most overrated player in the NBA. That still is just shocking. Of all the players in the NBA that you could pick to call overrated, like, I don't know, how about a guy that won an MVP a couple years ago, has routinely wilted in the spotlight of the NBA playoffs, can't be available for his team, and is yet making almost $500 million. Like, Joel Embiid is not a better choice for the most overrated player in the NBA than Tyrese Haliburton. There can't be a further disconnect between the basketball viewing public and those who actually play the game, but advantage people on the outside. But half of them didn't even know really anything about Tyrese Haliburton. So it was just wild when it happened, when this Athletic article came out where the players voted him the most overrated, because it's like, wait, we're not even talking about Tyrese Haliburton. How can he be overrated? Like, you would think part of the thought process of calling someone overrated would be that ESPN or the national media fawns over the guy. Nobody was talking. That's part of what makes this run by the Indiana Pacers so incredible. No one has talked about this basketball team at all the entirety of the basketball season. No one's paid attention to them. Not even in the East. Forget what's in the West, which can, take in a lot of attention when you have Steph and you have LeBron and you have the Lakers and Luka gets traded there and you have Nikola Jokic and you have the better conference with all these teams that are viable. You have the Suns disaster. Like, the West, if you cut off the NBA at the East and just drop the East off the face of the earth, like, you would, ESPN and local shows like mine would still have a lot to talk about just with the West alone. But even in the East, it was how good the Cavs are. It's, can the Boston Celtics repeat? It was the New York Knicks. Nobody was talking about the Indiana Pacers. And yet Tyrese Haliburton is the most overrated player in the NBA. So he goes from being named that to, I think, being what many people wish Anthony Edwards was. I was thinking about this last night. Whether it's the face of the league or the next big thing, however you want to frame the conversation, whatever you want to call it, the next great hope for an American basketball player, that's probably what it is. It's what it is. I mean, it's already bad enough when you have, Luka and Jokic and Giannis and SGA and Wemby, being four of those guys, arguably being four of the best 5 players in the league right now. And then you have Wemby, who's only a matter of time before he's on that list. That's already bad enough compared to what the U.S. has to offer in terms of basketball talent. But now you're on the precipice of no more Steph Curry, no more Kevin Durant, no more LeBron James. I think that's really what it is. They call it face of the league, because that catches the eye or the ear. But really what it is Is there an American basketball player that we can throw our support behind? That we can fawn over, that we can talk about all the time? And Anthony Edwards was that guy. And I like Anthony Edwards. I think we just got ahead of ourselves with Anthony Edwards. I'm not out on him. I think people forget how young he is. He has accomplished a great deal already. But like Tyrese Haliburton is what you want Anthony Edwards to be right now. He's got his team in the NBA Finals. He's got him with the 1-0 lead. And what was the biggest criticism of Anthony Edwards throughout this postseason? When the Wolves need him the most to call his own number and make a shot, he wasn't there to do it. And yet that's the entirety of who Tyrese Haliburton is. And now Haliburton wasn't great last night. By his own admission, he wasn't good. He only scored 14 points. He was quite inefficient from the field. He did a fantastic job facilitating the Pacers' offense. So it's not like the guy dominated for 4 quarters by any stretch of the imagination. But when it came time for someone to be a hero, the ball was in his hands and he called his own number. That's what people wanted to see from Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards was doing a lot of good basketball things. He was trying to involve his team. He was trying to defend. But ultimately, we want a guy to take that shot. Think of Kobe. Think of Michael Jordan. We want these players at the end of the game to have the ball in their hands and not pass. Remember when LeBron got killed when he passed the ball to Donyell Marshall all those years ago? We don't want them to make the right basketball play. We want our American stars to call their own number and make that shot. And I don't know if it's the right way of thinking, because part of why these European players are so good is because of their basketball IQ, because of the fact that they affect the game in so many other ways than just scoring. The fact that they constantly make the right basketball decision, we should be celebrating that. We should actually want that in our American players, which, by the way, is also Tyrese Haliburton. He's always making the right basketball play. He never turns the ball over. So he actually fits in line with the type of player you would say the best players in the world right now are, with Nikola Jokic obviously being at the top of that list. You have some of that where it's just always the right play, but he also mixes in that very American thing of you're in your driveway, you're counting down in your head or out loud, and you turn around and you hit that shot. That's how we all grow up in America playing basketball. That's the moments we all dream of. So we want our stars to do that. And Michael did it, and Kobe did that. Tyrese Haliburton may not take over games with his scoring all the time, but we've now gotten at least one of those moments from Tyrese Haliburton in every series. Time winding down, game in the balance. It's Haliburton taking and making the shot. Shouldn't he be who we're investing all this in? Whether it's the face of the league stuff or the next superstar? Shouldn't it be Tyrese Haliburton? I'll tell you this right now. He's the MVP narrative going into next year is going to be Haliburton. So why not all this other stuff? Not that Anthony Edwards is necessarily a terrible decision or a terrible player to put all of that on, but like Haliburton's already that dude. All this time, ESPN has been looking for what they would call the face of the league, which is LeBron, until LeBron walks away. And he was there all along in Indiana. They didn't go. Let me make sure I get my geography right. They just need to look a bit south. Is Indiana further east than Minnesota? I mean, it's the same general area. And they were willing to look to a smaller market in Minneapolis to find this guy. They were just looking in the wrong small market. Just crazy last night. Just sheer insanity. What Tyrese Haliburton has done, what this Pacers team just continues to do. 719-24-7. 13-13. We'll get back to the NHL next. Some news, and it's not the greatest news for one of the most beloved members of the Colorado Avalanche. The conversation regarding the Colorado Avalanche has kind of now shifted from, not completely, because there are some questions about who's going to be back with the team, but last couple of days after they signed Brock Nelson, it's more about who's going to be healthy when the season begins. Logan O'Connor this morning underwent successful hip surgery, according to the team, and he's going to be out 5 to 6 months. Now, this is hardly the worst news ever, because we know that even though the Avalanche would very much like to win as many games as possible from the beginning of the season till the end, that really all you need to do before the holidays is just put yourself within reach of your goal. Playoffs, division, President's Trophy, whatever it might be, just be within reach. You can't win anything before January, but you can lose some things. So it's not the worst case scenario with Logan O'Connor, but it's not great news by any stretch of the imagination. What you saw from that fourth line, and him in particular in that Dallas series, man, if you could sign up for some more of that this upcoming season, then we're really talking about the Avs having depth. And obviously Logan O'Connor, whether he, is stealing the puck and breaking away for goals or not, is still a very important depth piece to this Avalanche team. So they'll be missing him for sure. But you get the surgery when you do, so you could be back for when things really heat up after the calendar turns to the new year. So that's going to be the situation with Logan O'Connor, who would replace him on that fourth line. Are they going to bring back Kiviranta? You got Parker Kelly. And then, of course, you have Jack Drury. So you have some options. Seeing some talk on social media about this maybe being the offseason that they get rid of Sam Girard. And Sam Girard has had kind of a rough go of it in Colorado. He's been a popular scapegoat. And I talked about this yesterday. The Avs are going to have to move one of their mid-level, shall we say, contracts. Girard, Manson, Colton, they're probably going to have to move at least one of them in order to be able to completely fill out the roster the way they would like to. Which you got to keep all options open. Okay, but let's just not make this about, well, Sam Girard's got to go for performance reasons. Okay, let's not do that. We've had this discussion many a time with Sam Girard. Yeah, he's not your prototypical defenseman. He's better with a bigger defenseman like Josh Manson. That's why it works so well. A couple years ago was you had the guy that was more, it was kind of the same thought process as you have when you put Taves and Makar together. You have somebody that's a little bit more offensively inclined as a defenseman. Then you need a true stay-at-home defensive defenseman. And I don't even know that Josh Manson totally fills that role, but at least from the physicality standpoint, he does. If we're talking off of performance, who can the Avs move that makes a decent amount of money to be able to fill out the rest of this roster? I would prefer they go with Josh Manson. But if Sam Girard, and wouldn't it somewhat speak to what Sam Girard is as a hockey player if the market is more amenable to taking on Sam Girard than they are Josh Manson. But it's at least one of those three guys, Girard, Manson, Colton, that the Avs are really going to have to look at moving. They're going to have to move them, not even look at. They're going to have to move one of those guys. What can you get back? You might be able to get the most back for Sam Girard. But this is not about what Sam Girard isn't. This is about he fits in salary-wise with the type of contract the Avs may be looking to move, and more teams might be interested in his services as opposed to Josh Manson. Maybe Ross Colton would be the best option of them all to maybe move. I don't want to mess too much with the blue line. They're already going to have to add to it. But it'll probably be one of those guys that are moved. And you move who you can move. And get this roster set. But it's hardly... Look, you got the Brock Nelson thing done. This is not, what will ultimately make or break the Colorado Avalanche. I know depth is important. I'm not diminishing that, but the Avs should be able to open up enough money to bring back Yoel Kiviranta and Jonathan Drouin, if that's what they're thinking, or Ryan Lindgren. They should be able to do that. And that'll be, to me, that's kind of the next thing. I mean, forget the Avs. Not that anyone was thinking they'd be in the Mitch Marner sweepstakes, but just forget all these guys at the top of the list. When it comes to NHL free agents, forget about every single one of them. They took one of those guys off that list in Brock Nelson. This is minor moves. This is moving salary. This is maybe recouping draft capital. This is opening up some money to find some bargain deals to fill out the depth on this roster. And I think they'd like to do it with some of their pending free agents. Kiviranta probably being at the top of that list. Now, we got some time until the Avs really get going with the business of the offseason. Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final tonight. Coming off of the heroics of Leon Draisaitl, same rules I think apply. I think Florida has to win this game if they can reasonably expect to win this series. 88% of teams that take a 2-0 series lead, regardless of where those two games are, in the Stanley Cup Final go on to win. This is as close to a must-win as you can get. I think Florida has to answer. And I think if you're Florida, I think you felt like you didn't leave it all out on the ice. I think there's some easy things that you can look at if you're Paul Maurice and you're the Panthers and say, look, if we're better here, I mean, the game went into overtime, right? It was a one goal game. Just a couple of slight adjustments, and Florida could easily be victorious tonight. I would say two things that I'm looking for from the Florida side. One is just, hey, if you get a 3-1 lead on this team, bury them. That's been kind of the story the last couple of nights. If you get a decent lead on a team, you got to bury them. Edmonton's not going to go away. Indiana's not going to go away. If Florida gets a 3-1 lead, they got to find a way to finish that thing out. They can't leave the door open. And it's a lot of credit goes to that Edmonton. 100%. But Florida is good enough. They should figure out a way. If they once again get up by multiple goals tonight, they should be able to find a way to close it out. Now, how do they do that? One of the more surprising things that I saw in game 1 that was the depth of Edmonton outplaying the depth of Florida. You have Kasperi Kapanen with a couple of assists the other night for Edmonton. So Edmonton got some production from unexpected places, but you have a player on your fourth line that commits the delay of game penalty that gives Edmonton the power play that they score on to win the game. But the thing is that they were putting in Nosek when he had barely played in that game. Like, that's what struck me. For as deep as Florida is, line 1 through 4, Paul Maurice barely played his fourth line. Gotta try to roll 4 lines tonight, I think, if you're Paul Maurice. And then ultimately it was a power play that doomed them. It's inevitable with Edmonton. It was actually, fortuitous for Florida the other night that they were able to get out of the first 3 power plays. Edmonton got out of the night unscathed. And a lot of that had to do with Edmonton committing their own penalties. There was that stretch in the first period where things got really nutty and teams were negating their own power plays. But anytime you play Edmonton, they're going to put Draisaitl and McDavid together. You don't want any part of that. No matter who you are, you don't want any part of that. And eventually it did end up costing the Florida Panthers. Giving up 4 power plays is hardly a huge number, but knowing that eventually that team is going to break through with a man advantage. I think the same thought process applies for game 2 as is game 1. Try to stay out of the penalty box, which is difficult for Florida, right? They like to really live on the edge a little bit. Yeah, we'll see what Florida has in store. I mean, the 2 things that I think Draisaitl and what I think he's going to be huge in this series. If there is something that I think if you're an Edmonton fan that you can bank on for the most part the rest of the series, it's what Leon Draisaitl was able to do in game 1. The depth and Stuart Skinner locking in the way he did after conceding 3 goals. I would not be as confident that that's going to continue through the rest of the series. And it goes back to me saying, at Florida, if you get a multiple goal lead, put them away. Stuart Skinner has certainly played well overall in this post, especially, I guess, lately. Really shaky to begin the Kings series, but was got to give it to him really good the rest of the way. But he is one shot away from being the bad Stuart Skinner. Got to keep that pressure on him if you're Florida. But it'll be a fascinating one tonight. In Edmonton in game 2, can Florida even up the series 88% of the time? That team takes a 2-0 series lead in the Stanley Cup final. They go on to win the series. 719-24-7, 1313. Take your thoughts on that. We'll reset with the stories that are driving the show after the top of the hour here. Do want to get back just for a moment to the Avs. One other thing I wanted to mention in concert with Logan O'Connor. I'm really fascinated to find out what they do with Gabriel Landeskog. He had the Instagram post the other day. People kind of freaked out a little bit. I don't think he made it all the way back and played that well just to retire. Like, I just think it was him soaking everything in and then trying to put into words what that whole ride meant. I didn't get why people panic so much, but when someone gets overly emotional on an Instagram post, you think he's calling it quits. but how they're going to manage him, because clearly he can be an important piece for them. I mean, that part of the equation, I think Gabriel Landeskog, to his credit, answered it. But how do you get from point A to point B, with point A being the start of the season and point B being game 83 and beyond? How do you get him right for the playoffs? That'll be interesting to see, and it will leave a bit of a void in your top six. But hey, they've been completely without him for multiple years. I think the Avalanche will be able to find a way through that, knowing that they still have Gabriel Landeskog, even in fewer minutes or being a healthy scratch one night, however they do it. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, we'll hit the three stories that are driving the show, and we got a winner-take-all Game 3 in the Women's College World Series, and that's coming up for you tonight at 6 here on Extra Sports 1300. Hello there. Welcome in. Third hour on this Friday. Glad to have you, whether you're listening to the show on air, online, or through the app, or whether you're watching the show on our social media platforms. I do greatly appreciate it. If you'd like to be a part of the program by texting in, calling in, or tweeting in your thoughts, please, by all means, do. The number is 719-247-1313. The handle is at Gingerly Tweets. Let's start this hour right with the three stories that are driving the show. All right, story number one is those SOBs did it again.
Gildas Alexander spins, pulls up, jumper. Off the mark, won't go. Rebound, Neesmith. The Pacers with a chance to win it. Final seconds, no fouls to give. Haliburton looking. Haliburton driving, pulls up, jump shot. It's good! It's good! With 0.3 of a second remaining. Timeout, OKC. Tyrese Haliburton does it again.
Audio courtesy of the NBA. I do mean SOBs as a term of endearment because these guys, they just keep doing this. And this was supposed to be the one team, the one stage that the Indiana Pacers could not possibly win in the way they had been winning routinely throughout these playoffs. And yet, right out of the gate, game one, rallying from a 15-point deficit to beat the Oklahoma City Thunder 111-110 and take a 1-0 series lead. And the heroics of Tyrese Haliburton are, I use the word that's not really a word, Mahomesian in nature. There was a feeling that developed with teams going against Patrick Mahomes that there was not an amount of time that would be too little for Patrick Mahomes to drive the Kansas City Chiefs downfield and beat you. It is getting to that point with Tyrese Haliburton that the only way that you can be free and clear of Tyrese Haliburton doing what he did to the Bucks, doing what he did to the Cavs, the Knicks, and now the Thunder is if you are holding on to the ball with zeros on the clock. Tyrese Haliburton is the player that everyone wants Anthony Edwards to be. The player that when the moment is the greatest, that even if most of his game is distributing for other players and making his teammates better and making the right basketball play, he's calling his own number. It's happened in 4 straight series now. And that is just the culmination of the Indiana Pacers not dying. You can't kill them. 10 points, 12 points, 15 points, 17 points, doesn't matter. No lead is safe for this team. Or no lead is safe from this team, I should say. And they just do it with, it's the highest form of team basketball. It's everybody. It was Obi Toppin knocking down threes. It was Miles Turner. It was Nebhard. It was Neesmith. It was Haliburton, of course. It was all of them. It wasn't just Haliburton taking over the game and scoring the last 20 points for the Indiana Pacers. He only had 4 in the last 9 minutes of the fourth quarter. Only had 14 for the game. But that's also a direct result of the way Tyrese Haliburton plays, facilitating that offense. And they did it last night against the one team in the league that supposedly does what Indiana does better than Indiana. Not last night. It looked like it was SGA against 5 Pacers down the stretch of that game. And now the series that supposedly no one wanted to watch is going to be must-view television. Because even if the Thunder on Sunday get up by 15, you're not going away. You're not turning the game off. I know my boss isn't. My boss came to me today and said, I checked out the game, saw where it is, and then I looked away. He's not going to do that. He's going to be locked in. We spent all this time debating whether anyone cared that little OKC and little Indiana were in the NBA Finals, and now through game 1, and it's only one game, but now it's more than some of these other series we've had over the last few years. You're not going to miss it. You're not going to turn away. This is Adam Silver's dream here. A series that no matter how bad it gets, you're not compelled enough to walk away. And that's what the Indiana Pacers have done throughout these playoffs, and it's what they did last night to take the 1-0 series lead. Just insanity in the best way possible. Unbelievable. But yet, kind of who they've been. Here's story number 2.
I didn't take that lightly, and I didn't blame it all on Jake. But, the reality is if you go back to last year's playoffs, he's lost 6 to 7 games to Edmonton, and we gave up 2 shots on 2 goals in an elimination game.
That will be the last time I play that clip from Pete DeBoer after Game 5 of the Western Conference Final, because he is no longer gainfully employed by the Dallas Stars, who fired him today for that clip. It wasn't the fact that Pete DeBoer lost again in the Western Conference Finals. It wasn't even because he pulled Jake Ottinger after 2 shots in Game 5. It is the fact that he broke the cardinal rule of pulling your goalie, which is you do not blame the goalie. Jake Ottinger's teammates came to his defense. Jim Nill, the GM of the Dallas Stars today, in announcing the firing, did kind of make it known that the players, based on their exit interviews, kind of led them in this direction. Pete DeBoer lost the Dallas Stars locker room by throwing Jake Ottinger under the bus. And I picked it out as it was happening. Broken clock, blind squirrel, all of that stuff. But I thought it was a fireable offense, and now it is. But here's the thing. Because Pete DeBoer had put the Dallas Stars in such a precarious position by losing his mind for a second and saying what was on his mind, but you definitely don't say, now he puts the Dallas Stars in a really tough spot, because the NHL hiring cycle supposedly ended yesterday. Right? Former Av, and I felt like Marco Sturm played for the Avs like a year ago, but he's now the coach in Boston. Pittsburgh hired some dude I've never heard of, but that was it. That was all of them. The carousel had turned, it had stopped, it shut down. The amusement park closed, and then Dallas is like, wait, can we get in there? Fire it back up. Who are they going to get? And I'll throw out this name. I threw it out earlier in the show. David Carl. Clearly, he had interest from NHL teams, which is why, or he leveraged that interest to get a new contract at DU. I can't imagine the buyout is too great for a now kind of desperate Dallas Stars team to find their coach. Now, it might not be David Carl, but they got to go find someone. when you've had multiple coaches get hired in this cycle. And then you add on top of it the fact that there are discussions about whether the Dallas Stars have to move on from Jason Robertson. Once thought to be the death of the Dallas Stars, that they would not have Jason Robertson in the Avalanche series. Now the Dallas Stars might voluntarily get him off of their roster because they're in a little bit of a cap crunch here. They have a lot of guys that are poised to leave via free agency, including Jamie Benn. Could they move Robertson? I think they'll try everything they can to keep him. I would actually be shocked if they traded him. But Mason Marchment, important depth piece of the team, he could be gone. And all of a sudden, just a few weeks after Dallas sent the Colorado Avalanche into a tailspin, now it's Dallas of those two rivals that looks to be in the worst position. This is a fascinating offseason. And if you're the Colorado Avalanche, or if you're an Avalanche fan, on the heels of locking up Brock Nelson, your top six is intact. You got your goalies. You still got Cale Makar. There's some, fidgeting, massaging of the roster that will need to go on. But you got the core of your team intact. And then you look at the team that you've met your demise against the last couple of years that looks to be in disarray. I'll tell you who's the happiest about the Pete DeBoer news. Jared Bednar. And here's the thing. I don't see anyone giving Mikko Rantanen any credit. Like now, his double agent status can be finally revealed. The job is done. The mission is over. Why is no one crediting Mikko Rantanen? The guy refused to sign with the Carolina Hurricanes, forcing them to trade him to Dallas, a place that he voluntarily signed an extension, a high dollar extension that now has put a lot of other stars' futures in question. And while he did put an end to the Avs season, but you got to sell it. You got to sell it. No good double agent doesn't sell it. He had to sell it. He had to turn foe. He had to do it. It was necessary, or else he would blow his cover. So he eliminated the Colorado Avalanche, and then he stopped scoring goals completely, which put Dallas up against the Edmonton Oilers, which caused Pete DeBoer to lose his mind, which got him fired, and now the Dallas Stars are crumbling. Why is no one giving Mikko Rantanen credit? We can see plainly now the big picture. The Colorado Avalanche owe Mikko Rantanen a debt of gratitude because he has taken down that organization from the inside in a way that in an Avs sweater he never could. I salute you, Mikko Rantanen. I know what you were up to. Man, Dallas. How quickly things turn, right? Here is story number 3.
I see that as something that's got to be earned with the way I work, the way I come in and learn the offense and gain the trust of Sean and Bo and the rest of the coaches and the rest of the players. So, I think we got a bunch of jokers, honestly, on this team that can have a great role in this offense. So it's definitely something that, I like to embrace, but something I'm going to go earn.
That is Evan Ingram talking about being the Broncos joker. And it seems like the term joker has taken on a larger meaning than what even Sean Payton put on it. Listening to Evan Ingram talk, it's almost like it goes beyond what you can do on the football field. Like, that's what a joker is supposed to be. Like, the joker's wild, right? You could use him in a variety of different ways to create mismatches. That's what Sean Payton wants out of his joker. But listening to Evan Ingram, it's almost like this is the highest honor that can be bestowed upon you by Sean Payton, to be named the joker. And because it's going to require, producing on the football field, but also a very deep understanding of the offense in a way that maybe only Bo Nix exceeds. Like, it's almost like being the joker is almost a reflection of your work ethic, of your football IQ, of all of this other stuff. It seems to be taking on a much bigger meaning than just, hey, this really athletic, tall guy that we can put on a slower linebacker or a smaller corner. I wouldn't be surprised to hear at some point that, like, the Broncos offense is like calling themselves jokers. We're the jokers. It just seems like it's taking on more of a meaning than what even Sean Payton had in store for it. But Evan Ingram, listening to him talk, he's embracing it. Great power, great responsibility type deal. He's embracing it. It's why he's here, and he's not in LA. LA just want to use him as a plain old tight end. But in Denver, they promised him he could be so much more. And that's why he's here. And I would say that outside of Bo Nix, there's not a player on the Denver Broncos with more pressure to produce this season than Evan Ingram. And the two of them can help each other out in that regard. But I mean, if Evan Ingram doesn't produce this season, oh boy. I'll just tell you now, I'm not above it. I try to, walk a different path. I try to go outside the box sometimes. Not with this. If Evan Ingram, the joker, is not producing for the Denver Broncos, it will lead this show on a weekly basis. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the three stories that are driving the show. Coming up next, I feel like it's a good way to end the show on a Friday. A new mock trade just dropped regarding Michael Porter Jr. I'll tell you who they're supposedly supposed to get. That was redundant. And whether it has any chance of happening. Welcome back, Drive Time Sports. 719-247-1313 is the number if you want to get in here before the week is up. Chris has a suggestion for the Dallas Stars for their next head coach. Ange Postecoglou, which I know I butchered his name, but I know who Chris is talking about. He says he gets hardware his second year everywhere. And that's not Chris's opinion. That's the man's opinion himself. Take a listen. By the way, he was just fired by Tottenham, wasn't he? Doesn't mean they'll win this year, the first year. But the year after that, Dallas Stars, Stanley Cup. Yeah, I mean, are they going to have to go the Knicks route and try to – I don't know the last time we've had a coach get traded in the NHL. But you look at the cycle, Tocchet ends up in Philly. Adam Foote gets the job in Vancouver. Pittsburgh just hired a guy. Marco Sturm is the new head coach of the Boston Bruins. Like, the carousel has stopped. Even John Tortorella found gainful employment somewhere. He's coaching in USHL, I think. AHL. I saw Torts got a job somewhere. Now, I'm sure the buyout is not totally out of the Stars' reach. Just like with David Carl, I'm sure they can afford whatever the buyout is at DU. But this is not a good spot. And again, I only blame Pete DeBoer. He said it. Jim Nill wasn't going to fire him because he lost to the Oilers. From the 719, I'm sorry, but Ingram is nowhere near a joker. Well, is he Jimmy Graham? Is that what we're comparing him to? And I think this is where the danger lies. And I don't think you are somebody that feels this way, but more of the boisterous Bronco fans on social media are making this mistake and I've made these comparisons before, but it's strictly in a skill set. It's not who they are, right? A Kamara, Michael Thomas, a Jimmy Graham, like, you can see the skill sets, but they are worse versions of those players. That's the important part that some people are not quite grasping. Evan Ingram is not Jimmy Graham. He was not what Jimmy Graham was as Sean Payton's Joker. RJ Harvey is not Alvin Kamara. But, and this is part of the reason why I identified Ingram as a potential Joker here, out of the tight end position, Evan Ingram, the last 5 years, is the fifth leading receiver from the tight end position. The only players that surpass him, Dalton Schultz, TJ Hawkinson, Mark Andrews, George Kittle, and Travis Kelce. I don't think there's any shame in being below those guys on that list. The truth can be somewhere in the middle, right? Or two things can be true. Evan Ingram could have the skills necessary to fill that role in Sean Payton's offense, but it also doesn't have to mean that he's going to be Jimmy Graham. But they got as good a Kelsey's not going anywhere. Kittle's not going anywhere. Andrews isn't going anywhere. nor is Hawkinson or Dalton Schultz. They got the next best guy. So I'm not totally down on the idea of Evan Ingram being a joker. And I've seen him at his best. It's pretty dang good. Remember what he was just not that long ago with Jacksonville. And I do believe that in Sean Payton's offense, he has a chance to flourish even more. But there has to be a reasonable level of expectation. The Broncos have players that may remind you of players from Sean Payton's past, may remind him, may have some of the same traits. But he's not trotting out Drew Brees, Alvin Kamara, Jimmy Graham, Michael Thomas, and Marcus Colston next year. Okay, he's trying out Bo Nix, RJ Harvey, Evan Ingram, Pat Bryant, and Cortland Sutton. It's different. But I will also say at this point, though, even though Evan Ingram is not Jimmy Graham, and I don't expect him to look like Jimmy Graham in this offense, if I had to pick one of those guys that was closest to their counterpart from Sean Payton's past, it would be Evan Ingram. He's the closest. Bo Nix has miles to go before he's Drew Brees. We haven't even seen RJ Harvey on the field yet. And Pat Bryant may not even have a role with this team because Devon Vele apparently was the darling of OTAs. This from the 719, same texter. Even Ingram isn't even close to Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham is a Hall of Famer. Totally agree. I am not disagreeing with you. But can Evan Ingram, if you can divorce yourself from that, if you can not bring in who was the joker for Sean Payton in the past and just look at what is required from that position, what Sean Payton is looking for, Evan Ingram checks a lot of those boxes. He does. And I think he's going to be productive for the Denver Broncos. I do. But you're right. He's not Jimmy Graham. The Broncos aren't those Saints teams. Two things can be true. Albert says the Dallas Stars can make the NCHC and the rest of college hockey winners while winning themselves by hiring David Carl. Plus, DU would end up losing. Yeah, I think we can all. Sorry, I didn't really sell the. Yeah. I think we can all get behind that. Does anybody have any quarrel with that? Now, the downside is David Carl, and it has to be noted with Albert, he does not always have the Avalanche's best interest at heart. So the downside is David Carl is coaching the Dallas Stars, and I think he is a phenomenal coach. But would I expect him to get Dallas over the hump into the Stanley Cup final in year one? No, I don't. He's going to have to grow a little bit on the job, adjust to that level of hockey. But in the meantime, I think, hey, Air Force opens up the year with DU this year. The schedule just came out. Think the boys would like to go against the team not coached by David Carl? I think Falcon fans and Tiger fans who don't always agree on everything would unite in trying to get this done in whatever way they can. And Albert's point about college hockey in general, absolutely. I mean, DU has, I know they came up short this year, but their track record of success under David Carl. I mean, you can't even go in hockey to find a comparison. You got to go outside to other college sports. You got to look at Oklahoma softball and Alabama football. I mean, what he has done is, and we can argue that, the importance of the sport and all that, how high profile the sport is, but you just look at the success in his or her particular sport. David Carl, about as successful as any college coach in the country in any sport since he took over that gig. Would not be the worst thing. We'll see where they go. Going to be interesting. Speaking of college athletics, we got winner-take-all Game 3 of the Women's College World Series coming up, Texas and Texas Tech. So let's end this show with a new mock trade that just dropped involving Michael Porter Jr. This from Bleacher Report. They are proposing a 3-team deal between the Nuggets, the Hornets, and the Utah Jazz. In the trade, the Utah Jazz would get Josh Green, Grant Williams, Josh Okogie, Zeke Naji, and a 2027 first-round pick from Charlotte that is lottery protected, and a 2032 first-round pick unprotected from Denver. That's how far away the Nuggets need to think in terms of their draft capital, 2032. So that's what the Jazz get, which is just a bunch of garbage, with all due respect. I mean, they're in it for the draft picks, right? The Charlotte Hornets would get Michael Porter to play with LaMelo Ball. That would be interesting. And the Denver Nuggets would receive from the Utah Jazz Lauri Markkanen. Like every other Michael Porter trade I have seen, and I have been known to defend Michael Porter, I would take this one and every other one that is being proposed. I would take Lauri Markkanen over Michael Porter. I would take Lauri Markkanen straight up for Michael Porter. But like every other mock trade that's out there regarding Michael Porter, I hate to be that guy, but I have to be. Why in the world would the Utah Jazz do this? At some point, Utah has got to try and win. I know it didn't work out with Cooper Flagg, who would have been just the perfect fit for the Utah Jazz, if you are following what I'm saying. They lost out, but how much longer are they going to do it? Like, at some point, they got to acquire things. At some point, they got to start pointing the needle up, don't they? They just got Lauri Markkanen not that long ago. He's a very good player, and they're just going to get rid of him? I mean, at what point do the Utah Jazz actually consider trying to win basketball games? Because it's been a while. And tell me what the Hornets angle of all of this is. What the Hornets want with it? Why can't the Hornets go to the Jazz and say, why don't we just acquire Lauri Markkanen and we'll give you draft picks? Why does there have to be the middleman of Michael Porter or the Denver Nuggets? I just don't get it. It's difficult to mock a trade when you're dealing with such big contracts. I understand that. So anybody that's able to pass these things through Trade Machine and it works, kudos to them. because it's tough. Go on to Trade Machine tonight. Try to trade Jamal Murray and Michael Porter and try to get anything of note back in return. It's very difficult. But all of these trades, and like there was the other one, the 3-teamer with the Lakers and the Nets, where the Nuggets essentially gave up Michael Porter and got Dalton Connect and Rui Hachimura. That one a little bit more feasible than this one, but still not really. Again, why are the Nuggets getting multiple players? Like Dalton Connect's interesting. I love Dalton Connect on the Denver Nuggets. Or how about the one where they land Cam Johnson? One of the most prized up-and-coming players in the entire league, and the Nuggets are going to get him in exchange for Michael Porter Jr.? Like, I'm sorry. At times, I have to deal in reality. I already feel like I'm banging the drum too loudly to somehow get Kevin Durant in exchange for Michael Porter. And I actually think that my trade is a little bit more feasible than some of these other ones. It's just going to be difficult. Michael Porter and Jamal Murray's trade value, you could argue, has never been lower. Does that mean they have zero trade value? No. But you're not selling high. You're not going to get a player like Lauri Markkanen would fit within the Denver Nuggets like a hand in a glove. That would be an amazing trade to pull off. I don't see it. I mean, I enjoy talking about it. I enjoy theorizing about all this stuff. But at some point, I'm just left with, there's no way. And also, by the way, just as kind of an aside, can we start with who the Nuggets are going to have as their GM first? Because right now, Ryan Kaufman and Bleacher Report and a bunch of people on Twitter are acting on behalf of the Nuggets as their general manager because they don't have one. Can we get that item of business settled here? And then worry about if this guy is going to be able to pull off the heist of the century, giving up Michael Porter at his lowest trade value when he was playing with one arm, and they dump the Zeke Naji contract and get a player that's arguably better than Michael Porter Jr. Can we at least find out who the next GM of the Nuggets is? Can we at least get to know Ben Tenzer a little bit? Can we get the interim tag removed? Can we hear from the guy before we expect him to make miracles happen? Because that's what all these mock trades are. They're miracles. People are weaving miracles for the Denver Nuggets. It's just not feasible. If you're going to trade Porter or you're going to trade Murray, you're going to not get the best player in the deal. And that would be the disqualifier. You see all these mock trades out there. The disqualifier would be if the Nuggets end up with the best player in the deal, then that's it. Don't read on further. It's not going to happen. Why the Nuggets would trade a Porter or trade a Murray in most cases, if not all, 99 out of 100, is to remake their roster to fit this financial model of the NBA better. And maybe you get a younger player on the come up that in a couple of years may be able to give you some of what you lost in Michael Porter and Jamal Murray. And it would certainly make you deeper because it would probably add another piece to your bench unit. That's the kind of trade that is realistic. And I would understand that some people that root for the Denver Nuggets would not want them to do that kind of a trade. I think the Denver Nuggets would not want to do that kind of a trade, but that's the type of trade that is more realistic than something like this. But hey, I clicked, I read, I talked about it. What else are we doing on June 6th? Appreciate your patronage. Enjoy your weekend. I'll talk to you either tomorrow night for Switchback Soccer at 7 here on Extra Sports 1300, or definitely Monday at 3 for another edition of Drive Time Sports. Coming up after the break, Texas Tech, winner-take-all Game 3 of the Women's College World Series.